3 workers walk past a leaking flange every day for 2 weeks. Shift after shift, morning crew, evening, and night shift. All experienced operators, safety-conscious team, good people. Not one reported it. Not because they didn't care, not because they didn't know better, not because they were lazy or reckless, but because they literally stopped seeing it. When investigators asked why, all 3 said the same thing. I guess I just got used to it. This is the invisibility problem, and it affects every single one of us. Last episode, we talked about how even the most experienced person in the team drifts into autopilot. Today, we are talking about something even more insidious. How entire teams collectively lose their ability to see risk. This is the safety edge. Welcome back to the Safety Edge podcast, where safety leaders sharpen their edge. I'm Charles Edgar, your safety leadership coach. In this podcast, we explore the real dilemmas safety leaders face on site and in the workplace. Not textbook examples, not perfect scenarios, but the challenging, uncomfortable human moments when there is no obvious right answer and the pressure is real. And in each episode, we unpack one real-world leadership dilemma and explore how adopting a coaching mindset can make the difference. Not by controlling people, but by sharpening how we think, listen, and lead. You walk into a plant, and there's a strong smell of hydrocarbons in the air. It's your first time there, and you notice it immediately. Sharp, distinct, and impossible to ignore. You even think something must be leaking. But the people who walk there every day, they barely notice it. Not because the smell disappeared, but because their brains have adapted to it. Psychologists call this sensory adaptation, when a constant stimulus fades from our awareness. And the same thing can happen with risk. What once stood out slowly fades into the background until people stop noticing it. And that's often where the problem begins. When we focus on routine tasks, our brains tend to filter out the unexpected. We see what we are looking for and miss what we are not. Psychologists call this inattentional blindness, the tendency to miss what's right in front of us when our attention is focused elsewhere. A famous demonstration of this is an experiment from the book The Invisible Gorilla by Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons. They made people watch a video of a basketball game and count how many times the players passed the ball. A simple task and easy to track. But in the middle of the game, a person in a gorilla suit walked through the scene, stopped, beat their chest, and walked off. Half the viewers never saw the gorilla, not because they weren't paying attention, but because their attention was focused elsewhere. And familiarity makes the unexpected invisible. Now, apply that to your workplace. Think about a pressure relief valve that corrodes slowly over months. Day 1, it's barely noticeable. Day 30, slightly worse, but no one comments. Day 60, clearly degraded, but now it's normal. Day 90, everyone just accepts it as the way it is. The change happened, but no one saw it happen. Because our brains don't compare now to 3 months ago. They compare now to yesterday, and yesterday looked almost exactly the same. Things go worse when changes happen gradually. Psychologists call this habituation, our inability to detect slow, incremental shifts. But here's where it gets truly dangerous. When one person normalizes a risk, they might catch themselves, But when an entire team normalizes it altogether, it becomes invisible to everyone. Diane Vaughan called this pattern normalization of deviance when she studied the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. Small rule bending happens, no incident occurs, so it happens again, still no incident. Soon, everyone is doing it. It's no longer deviance, it's just how we do things now. The team isn't being reckless, they are adapting. And adaptation over time can turn critical safety barriers into background noise. It's much easier to catch it when it's just one person, but far more dangerous when it's everyone together and at the same time. Because if no one sees it, no one questions it. Picture this. You're walking the floor during a routine shift. Everything looks normal. Operators moving, equipment humming, no alarms, no obvious hazards. Everything feels safe, but as you observe more closely, you notice some issues. A valve that's slightly weeping. You ask about it. Oh yeah, that? It's been like that for a while. We keep an eye on it. A walkway with loose gratings. People just step over it and move on. Maintenance knows it. It's on their list. A glove dispenser at the chemical store sits empty for days. Yeah, we've been meaning to refill it. Everyone just grabs a pair from the next station and move on. A procedure that's been adjusted. It used to take 15 minutes. Now it routinely takes about 8. We figured out a more efficient way. Works fine. And when you ask about anything, the response is always the same. Oh yeah, that? It's been like that for a while. No big deal. No one is really being reckless. No one is consciously ignoring safety. They have just adapted. Because familiarity has pushed visible hazards into the background. And here's what makes it so uncomfortable. You can't point to one rule violation and say, fix this, because you are looking at something more subtle, something systemic, something collective. The entire team has normalized risk altogether, and now no one sees it anymore. The question isn't who's the expert I need to challenge. The question is, how did my entire team stop seeing what's right in front of them? Think about it for a moment. The weeping valve, the loose grating, the empty glove dispenser, the shortened procedure. Individually, each one is minor, but together, they reveal a pattern of drift, a pattern of adaptation, a pattern of invisibility. And in that moment, you realize this isn't about enforcing compliance. This is about helping your team see again. But how? How do you wake up a team that's collectively asleep? How do you make visible what familiarity has hidden? How do you challenge normal without creating defensiveness? That's the leadership challenge, not correcting one person's behavior, but interrupting collective normalization. And that is the dilemma. Why is this a dilemma? This is a dilemma because when one person drifts, you can intervene directly. But when it involves an entire team, intervention feels different, more complex, more delicate, more risky. Here's what you are facing. On one side, you see a collective drift, a team that has lost the ability to see what they are living with every day. On the other side, you see a functioning team, no incidents, no injuries, no violations. People believe they are working safely. A culture that says, we've been doing it this way for months. It's fine. And that creates deep internal conflict for you. If you intervene too strongly, you risk creating defensiveness across the entire team, being seen as out of touch with how work really gets done. You risk challenging the team morale by questioning everyone all at once. But if you stay silent, you risk allowing normalized deviations to compound over time, reinforcing the belief that drift is acceptable. This is not when you have a one-on-one conversation with anyone. It requires a cultural intervention. And culture doesn't change through a single conversation. So you are trapped between two uncomfortable options. Disrupt the team's confidence in their safe routines, or allow the invisible risk to continue accumulating. So what do most safety leaders do when they see this? They hesitate, not because they don't care, not because they don't see the risk, but because collective normalization is hard to challenge. Here's what typically happens. First, they rationalize. The team has been working like this for months without incidents. Maybe it's actually fine. I don't want to be the person who slows things down over minor issues. They'll think I'm micromanaging if I question every small deviation. And sometimes they wait for clearer evidence. I'll keep watching. If it becomes a real problem, I'll step in. Let me see if anyone else notices it first. And sometimes they say, I'll wait for the next audit to flag it. And at other times, they try to address the symptoms and not the pattern. They say things like, I'll just fix the whipping valve and the loose grating. I'll just refill the glove dispenser. Or sometimes they may simply just resort to compliance-based responses. Things like, I'll remind everyone about the procedures. I'll do a safety stand down and review the rules. I'll increase inspections and audits. None of these approaches are wrong, but none of them actually address the core issue, which is the team has collectively stopped seeing risk. Compliance doesn't restore sight, audits don't create curiosity, and reminders don't interrupt normalization. The result? The drift continues. The team remains asleep. Risk stays invisible until an incident forces everyone to wake up. But by then, it's already too late. Now let's see what effective safety leaders do differently. They create conditions that make risk visible again, not through enforcement, but through curiosity. And here's how. 1. They name the pattern without blame. Effective leaders don't focus on individual deviations, they highlight the collective pattern. Instead of saying, this valve is leaking, this grating is loose, this station is empty, why is this happening? They say, I'm noticing a pattern here. We have several small things becoming normal over time. Let's talk about that. This shifts the conversation from blame to awareness, from individual fault to collective drift. It invites reflection instead of defensiveness. 2. They ask questions that create collective reflections. Questions like, what are some of the things we've gotten used to over the past few months? What are those small deviations we now say, this is how we do things here? These questions do something powerful. They turn the team into their own observers. They shift the team from defensive to curious. 3. They build curiosity into team rituals. The best leaders don't rely on periodic interventions. They embed curiosity into the team's daily rhythm. They start every shift with the question, what's different today? They create fresh eyes by rotating people from other units to observe and ask questions. They reward people who spot normalized deviations, not to shame others, but to create a culture of conscious awareness. They understand that when curiosity becomes routine, visibility becomes sustainable. 4. They use stories to make invisible risk real. Stories of other teams who normalized deviations until they compounded. Stories of incidents that began with, we've been doing it this way for years. Stories of near misses caught by someone who asked a honest question. Stories do what data and rules cannot. They turn abstract risk into clear realities. They prevent complacency that comes from a false sense of safety. 5. They model curiosity themselves. This gives everyone else permission also to be curious. When they walk the floor, they ask genuine questions, not judgmental ones. When they observe a deviation that seems normalized, they pause and ask, has this always been like this? And when someone says, we've always done it this way, they respond, help me understand why. Here's a real example. A production manager at a refinery noticed the team had normalized several small shortcuts. Instead of issuing a directive, he did something different. He brought the team together and said, I've noticed some of our procedures have changed over time, and I'm curious how that happened. Not to blame anyone, I just want to understand. Can we look at what has changed and why? With this approach, the team felt safe to explore, and they identified 11 normalized deviations. None was flagged as wrong, but together the team could see the pattern. Within weeks, they revised 7 of their procedures, repaired 3 pieces of equipment, and established a weekly program just for reflection. No blame, no punishment, no defensiveness, just curiosity revealing hidden risk. That's the power of leading with curiosity instead of just compliance. It doesn't force sight, it just creates the conditions where sight becomes possible again. Now let's take that mindset into the field and see it from a coaching lens. I invite you to listen carefully to this conversation between the leader and operators during a routine operation safety meeting. Something the operators say catches the leader's attention and sparks his curiosity.
Hey, before we start, are we still running with that bypass valve open on pump 2?
Yeah, we left it like that after maintenance last month. It helped stabilize the flow.
Honestly, it's been working better this way. The pump doesn't trip anymore.
Right. At this point, it just feels like part of the setup.
The leader says, let me ask something. That bypass was supposed to be temporary, right?
Yeah, originally.
But we've been running it this way for weeks now. No worries, I guess.
Out of curiosity, why was the bypass installed in the first place?
Maintenance needed it during the repair. It was meant to reduce pressure while they worked.
And what was the plan after the repair?
Well, the plan was to close it and return to the normal configuration.
I guess we just didn't think it was necessary to switch it back.
And again, this isn't about blame. This happens everywhere. When something temporary works and nothing goes wrong, it slowly becomes the new normal.
Yeah, we just got used to it.
Exactly. Familiarity makes risk invisible. So let me ask the team something. What else around here started as temporary but now feels permanent?
Well, I guess that extension cable running across the control room floor.
Yeah, I got one too. Remember that ladder we keep using instead of the proper access platform?
The alarm that keeps flashing on panel B. Everyone just ignores it now.
That's the point. None of this happens because people don't care. It happens because people adapt. But when adaptation goes unchecked, small changes can slowly create bigger risk. So here's a question we should now start asking before each shift. What started as temporary that we are now treating as normal? Sometimes that single question helps us see things we've stopped noticing. Now let's examine the key takeaways from this episode. 1. Familiarity breeds invisibility. When something becomes routine, our brains stop treating it as a potential threat. We see what we expect, not what's actually there. This isn't carelessness, it's neuroscience. Our brains tend to filter out the normal to save energy. The problem with this is that risk doesn't care what we've normalized. 2. Normalization could be easily collective. The bigger issue here is not when just one person drifts, it's when the entire team normalizes risk altogether. When everyone treats something as normal, social proof unconsciously makes it feel safe. Everyone does it this way, becomes the new normal. but collective normalization doesn't make risk disappear, it just makes it invisible to everyone at the same time. 3. Curiosity is the antidote. By asking questions like, what used to feel unusual that now feels normal? What temporary fixes have quietly become permanent? What small issues have we learned to live with? These questions are designed to interrupt autopilot. They force the brain to compare, to notice, and to see things differently. This reinforces the fact that deliberate curiosity could easily make risk visible again. 4. Build curiosity into systems. Don't rely on individual vigilance alone. Create pre-job curiosity rituals. Rotate people through roles for fresh perspectives. Make the observation of anomalies a routine task. Share near-miss stories to keep risk real. When curiosity is built into system, it doesn't depend on memory alone. Over time, it becomes a default instinct. 5. Lead with questions and not corrections. The most effective way to interrupt collective normalization is not necessarily rule enforcement, it's facilitation. Ask questions that create reflection. Name patterns without blame. Model curiosity yourself. When you lead with curiosity, you restore sight, not by force, but through invitation. This week, start one meeting with this question. What's the one thing we've gotten used to that we should probably question? Don't solve it. Don't fix it. Just make it visible. Write it down. Acknowledge it. See it. Because the first step to managing risk isn't action, it's sight. When you build curiosity into your team's DNA through rituals, rotations, storytelling, and questions, you turn invisibility back to visibility. And you help your team see what familiarity has hidden. You stop small normalized deviations from growing into something bigger. That recognition, that moment of curiosity, that question, and the action that follows, that is the edge. Today, we explored the psychology of invisibility, inattentional blindness, habituation, and normalization of deviance. And we learned that the antidote isn't fear, it's curiosity. Not what could go wrong, but what's different today. Not blame for missing things, but creating space to see them again. If this episode resonates with you, share it with your team. Start by asking, what's the one thing we've gotten used to that we should be curious about? That single question can change everything. It can be the difference between seeing a risk early and missing it entirely. Don't miss the next episode of Season 3, where we explore a scenario where agreement feels easy, but the real test of leadership is in asking the hard questions. While here, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to invite a friend or colleague to listen along with you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Safety Edge podcast. I'm Charles Edgar, your safety leadership coach. And until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep sharpening your edge. Bye for now.
Brought to you by the Safety Edge platform, an independent leadership and safety learning platform, building leadership capacity, one conversation at a time. Find us wherever you get your podcasts